The warship Defiant cut through the void silently, its dark hull a shadow against the backdrop of distant stars. Captain Mark Walker stood at the command deck, his gaze locked on the deep space ahead. The stillness of the bridge contrasted sharply with the tension that gripped his crew. No one spoke, the usual chatter replaced by an acute awareness that every moment could bring new threats. Suddenly, the calm shattered. "Alert! Incoming distress signal," announced Lieutenant Grant, his voice a stark interruption to the silence. The crew tensed, ready for action. Captain Walker moved closer to the main console. "Source?" he asked, his tone measured but firm. "Unknown coordinates deep within the Orion sector," replied Grant, tapping rapidly at his display. The main screen flickered, then displayed the signal's data, encoded in a sequence unfamiliar to most known civilizations. Walker's eyes narrowed. This was no ordinary call for help. It was a plea from an uncharted region, possibly a trap or a cry from an unknown ally. "Enhance the audio," Walker ordered. The bridge's speakers crackled briefly before a voice emerged, distorted but unmistakably urgent. "This is Recon Station Echo 7 under attack. We have civilians aboard. Immediate assistance required." The plea echoed in the silent bridge, its urgency palpable. Walker felt a surge of resolve. He had seen many battles, witnessed too many sacrifices. Each plea for help bore the weight of lives at stake, and this one was no different. "Pinpoint their location. Prepare for a jump to hyperspeed," he commanded, his decision swift. The crew sprung into action, the earlier calm replaced by a flurry of strategic preparation. Grant worked his console, coordinates locking in. "Location secured, Captain. We can be there in minutes at hyperspeed." Walker nodded, turning to face his navigator, a young officer who had seen less of war's grim realities. "Steady, Ensign," he said, a quiet encouragement. "This is what we train for." The navigator nodded, his expression set as he initiated the jump sequence. As the Defiant braced for hyperspeed, the stars ahead stretched into lines of light. Walker stood firm, his mind racing through potential scenarios. Who were they rushing towards? What enemy awaited them in the shadows of uncharted space? This mission could be a trap, he knew, yet inaction was a risk he could never take. Lives hung in balance, and the Defiant, with its crew of silent guardians, would not falter. As space folded around them, Captain Mark Walker prepared to face whatever awaited in the Orion sector, his resolve as unyielding as the ship that bore him forward. As the Defiant emerged from hyperspeed, the Orion sector loomed before them, a panorama of chaos and destruction. Debris spun through the vacuum, remnants of ships and dreams alike, illuminated by intermittent flashes of distant explosions. Captain Walker's jaw tightened at the sight, the taste of impending conflict bitter on his tongue. "Status report," he demanded, his voice cutting through the low buzz of anxious energy on the bridge. "Multiple hostiles detected, Captain," reported Grant, his fingers dancing across the sensors. "And there's heavy damage to civilian structures on the station. It's a war zone." Walker nodded, absorbing the information. The scent of fear was almost palpable, a stark contrast to the sterile coolness of the bridge air. He could almost feel the heat of burning metal thousands of kilometers away, a silent testament to the horrors unfolding. "Visual on main screen," he ordered. The screen flickered to life, showing the beleaguered station, its once gleaming surfaces scarred and blackened. The sight of a civilian vessel attempting to navigate through the debris field caught his eye. Its struggle was futile. An explosion tore through its hull, sending a shockwave that reverberated through the Defiant. The crew flinched, the sound a grim echo in their ears, a reminder of the stakes. Walker felt a chill course through him, a sensory echo of the cold void outside. "We need a plan, and fast," he said, turning to his tactical officer, a seasoned yet understated man named Cole. "Ideas?" Cole adjusted the display, his movements precise. "We could deploy drones to create a distraction, pull the enemy fire away while we set up a defensive perimeter." Walker considered this, his mind racing through scenarios. "And the civilians? We have shuttles ready for evacuation, but covering them will be tricky with those raiders around." Cole replied, his voice steady despite the grim options. "Prepare the drones. Launch on my command," Walker decided swiftly. "And get those shuttles ready. Every second counts now." As Cole relayed the orders, Walker moved to the communication station. "This is Captain Walker to Recon Station Echo 7, he began, his voice firm, meant to carry hope as much as authority. "Help is on the way. Hold your position." The reply was crackled but fervent. "Thank God. We're holding, but hurry." Walker cut the transmission and turned back to the window. His reflection mingled with the stars beyond, a silent witness to his resolve. He could feel the deck vibrating beneath his feet, the subtle tremor of the ship bracing for battle, the tension palpable. "Shuttles are ready, Captain." "Drones are in position," Cole updated him, his report crisp. "Execute!" Walker's command sliced through the tension. Drones surged forward, a swarm of silver against the black, drawing a volley of fire as they maneuvered through the enemy's line of sight. The first shuttle launched, slipping through the chaos with a grace born of desperation. Walker watched, every nerve attuned to the progress of his crew, the tang of adrenaline sharp in his mouth. The second shuttle followed, each movement a ballet of precision under pressure. In the bridge's controlled calm, Walker stood resolute, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders but lightened by the trust in his team. As the Defiant engaged its adversaries, protecting those in peril, the battle for the Orion sector intensified, a testament to humanity's relentless spirit in the face of overwhelming odds. With the initial shuttles piercing the veil of chaos and the drones drawing enemy fire, Captain Walker's next move was critical. The Defiant hovered on the brink of deeper engagement, the battlefield sprawling before them like a canvas splashed with the stark hues of survival and ruin. Cole monitored the diversion, his voice steady as he reported, "Drones at 50% capacity." "We've got a narrow window for the next phase, Captain." Walker nodded, his gaze piercing the forward screen, where the flashes of distant explosions painted shadows and light across his face. "Deploy the covert team. It's time we cut the head off this beast." The covert team, a trio of the ship's most elite operatives, was already on standby. Led by Sergeant Hayes, a man whose presence was as quiet as it was potent, they geared up in the silent anticipation that precedes the storm of conflict. Their mission was to infiltrate the enemy command ship, a hulking fortress bristling with weaponry that orbited the beleaguered station like a dark moon. As Hayes and his team suited up, the tactile feel of their gear was a familiar comfort against the backdrop of uncertainty. Each weapon, each piece of armor, was a testament to their readiness, a shield against the vacuum's lethal embrace. "Team is ready for deployment," Hayes reported, his voice a low thrum in the comm link, devoid of any tremor despite the adrenaline that doubtless coursed through him. "Proceed," Walker commanded, his voice a blade of decisiveness cutting through the fog of war. The airlock hissed softly as it sealed, the sound a quiet sentinel to the gravity of their task. The team's departure was a silent ballet in the vacuum of space, their movements precise and graceful under the starlit theater of war. Outside, the debris field became their obstacle course. Hayes led with a navigator's eye, his team following in a fluid, silver line that weaved through the wreckage. Their approach to the enemy ship was a ghostly glide through the cosmos, their presence as fleeting as the whispers of stars. Back on the Defiant, Walker watched their progress, the taste of dark coffee lingering on his tongue, a stark reminder of the long night turned into a longer day. His crew worked like a well-oiled machine, their focus unyielding, their spirits tempered by the heat of battle yet unbroken. In the silence of space, the covert team reached the enemy hull. The absence of sound in their communication feed was a stark canvas, painting a picture of tension that could be felt all the way back on the bridge. Hayes placed the charges silently, his hands steady as the fate of the mission, and potentially the war, rested momentarily upon his shoulders. The explosion, when it came, was silent in the vacuum but brilliant as a newborn star, ripping open the enemy ship's skin with surgical precision. As the team breached the hull and disappeared into the bowels of the enemy ship, their sensors relayed their progress back to the Defiant. Each heartbeat, each breath, was a note in the symphony of suspense that now enveloped Walker and his crew. Back on the bridge, The metallic taste of anticipation was palpable. The crew's eyes locked on their screens, their bodies tensed for what might come next. Walker's command chair was a solitary island in a sea of quiet chaos, his resolve the anchor holding fast amidst the storm. As he awaited Hayes's next report, the distant stars seemed to hold their breath, the universe itself pausing in the wait of the moment. Inside the enemy ship, Sergeant Hayes and his team navigated through dimly lit corridors, their senses heightened to every shift and shadow. The ship was a labyrinth of cold metal and sharper edges, each turn and doorway bathed in a sinister glow from the emergency lighting that pulsed like the slow heartbeat of a dormant beast. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of burnt circuitry and a faint underlying tang of fear, perhaps remnants of previous battles that the ship had endured. Hayes's boots made no sound on the dense steel floor, their movements as fluid as specters haunting the bowels of their foe's vessel. "Clear," Hayes whispered into the comm, his voice barely above a breath as they approached what their intel suggested was the central command room. His team, compact and lethal, responded with mere nods, their understanding unspoken but absolute. Back on the Defiant, Captain Walker kept his eyes on the feed, watching ghostly figures move through the ship. His fingers drummed a silent rhythm on the arm of his chair, the only outward sign of his tension. The team reached the command room, and with a swift motion, Hayes set a breaching charge. The explosion was a bright flash, a silent scream in the void that tore the door away, revealing the heart of enemy operations. As they entered, they were met with a rush of warm air, the change so sudden it left a metallic taste in their mouths. The room buzzed with the energy of unattended consoles and flickering screens, a stark contrast to the desolation they had traversed. "Secure the room," Hayes commanded, his team spreading out with practiced ease. They moved among the consoles, tapping into the ship's network, extracting data with swift keystrokes. Every file accessed, every byte of data transferred back to the Defiant, was a whisper of secrets pulled from the shadows. Hayes stood watch, his gaze sweeping the room, every sense alert for the hint of an ambush. His ears caught the subtle shift in air pressure, a nearly imperceptible change that spoke of incoming danger. "Proceed," Walker commanded, his voice a blade of decisiveness cutting through the fog of war. The airlock hissed softly as it sealed, the sound a quiet sentinel to the gravity of their task. The team's departure was a silent ballet in the vacuum of space, their movements precise and graceful under the starlit theater of war. Outside, the debris field became their obstacle course. Hayes led with a navigator's eye, his team following in a fluid, silver line that weaved through the wreckage. Their approach to the enemy ship was a ghostly glide through the cosmos, their presence as fleeting as the whispers of stars. Back on the Defiant, Walker watched their progress, the taste of dark coffee lingering on his tongue, a stark reminder of the long night turned into a longer day. His crew worked like a well-oiled machine, their focus unyielding, their spirits tempered by the heat of battle yet unbroken. In the silence of space, the covert team reached the enemy hull. The absence of sound in their communication feed was a stark canvas, painting a picture of tension that could be felt all the way back on the bridge. Hayes placed the charges silently, his hands steady as the fate of the mission, and, potentially the war, rested momentarily upon his shoulders. The explosion, when it came, was silent in the vacuum but brilliant as a newborn star, ripping open the enemy ship's skin with surgical precision. As the team breached the hull and disappeared into the bowels of the enemy ship, their sensors relayed their progress back to the Defiant. Each heartbeat, each breath, was a note in the symphony of suspense that now enveloped Walker and his crew. Back on the bridge, the metallic taste of anticipation was palpable. The crew's eyes locked on their screens, their bodies tensed for what might come next. Walker's command chair was a solitary island in a sea of quiet chaos, his resolve the anchor holding fast amidst the storm. As he awaited Hayes's next report, the distant stars seemed to hold their breath, the universe itself pausing in the wait of the moment. Inside the enemy ship, Sergeant Hayes and his team navigated through dimly lit corridors, their senses heightened to every shift and shadow. The ship was a labyrinth of cold metal and sharper edges, each turn and doorway bathed in a sinister glow from the emergency lighting that pulsed like the slow heartbeat of a dormant beast. The air was stale, heavy with the scent of burnt circuitry and a faint underlying tang of fear, perhaps remnants of previous battles that the ship had endured. Hayes's boots made no sound on the dense steel floor, their movements as fluid as specters haunting the bowels of their foe's vessel. "Clear," Hayes whispered into the comm, his voice barely above a breath as they approached what their intel suggested was the central command room. His team, compact and lethal, responded with mere nods, their understanding unspoken but absolute. Back on the Defiant, Captain Walker kept his eyes on the feed, watching ghostly figures move through the ship. His fingers drummed a silent rhythm on the arm of his chair, the only outward sign of his tension. The team reached the command room, and with a swift motion, Hayes set a breaching charge. The explosion was a bright flash, a silent scream in the void that tore the door away, revealing the heart of enemy operations. As they entered, they were met with a rush of warm air, the change so sudden it left a metallic taste in their mouths. The room buzzed with the energy of unattended consoles and flickering screens, a stark contrast to the desolation they had traversed. "Secure the room," Hayes commanded, his team spreading out with practiced ease. They moved among the consoles, tapping into the ship's network, extracting data with swift keystrokes. Every file accessed, every byte of data transferred back to the Defiant, was a whisper of secrets pulled from the shadows. Hayes stood watch, his gaze sweeping the room, every sense alert for the hint of an ambush. His ears caught the subtle shift in air pressure, a nearly imperceptible change that spoke of incoming danger. "Contact!" he barked, just as shadows detached from the darker recesses of the room. Figures clad in the same stark hues of their environment converged on the team, their movements silent but deadly. The ensuing clash was a ballet of violence, each motion choreographed by necessity and survival instinct. Hayes's team responded with precision, their weapons discharging in controlled bursts, the flashes from their muzzles casting surreal patterns on the walls. The skirmish was over as quickly as it began, the enemy subdued, some dispatched, others left groaning on the cold metal floor. Hayes checked his team, a quick glance confirming they were unharmed, then returned to securing the data. "Captain, we have what we came for," Hayes reported, his voice a calm amid the storm of adrenaline that had just passed. "Good work, Sergeant." "Begin extraction immediately," Walker's voice replied, a thread of relief woven through his usual command. As Hayes and his team retraced their steps, the data they carried was a beacon of hope, a potential turning point. They left behind the echoes of their intrusion, a silent testament to their presence, felt but unseen, as they made their way back to the cold embrace of space where the Defiant awaited, ready to piece together the puzzle of their enemy's plans. As the covert team made their silent voyage back to the Defiant, the data they had seized was already weaving its tale, unfolding layers of encrypted messages and strategic plans on the screens of the ship's main analysis lab. Captain Walker watched, a stoic figure against the backdrop of urgent activity, as analysts decoded streams of information, their screens alight with the alien code cascading like a digital waterfall. "Captain, you'll want to see this," said Lieutenant Jensen, his voice steady yet charged with the gravity of their discovery. He gestured to a holographic display where a series of coordinates pulsed with a soft glow, each point a node in the enemy's operational network. Walker approached, his presence drawing a subtle pause in the room's bustling energy. "What are we looking at?" "It's not just military targets," Jensen explained, pointing to the map where several coordinates blinked ominously. "These locations are civilian, populated sectors. If the enemy moves as planned, the loss of life could be monumental." The information hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the stakes at play. The taste of responsibility was sharp on Walker's tongue as he absorbed the potential scale of the threat. "And there's more," Jensen continued, his finger tracing a line to a remote sector, previously unmarked and unremarked upon in their briefings. "This place doesn't match known strategic values. It's a wild card, Walker's gaze fixed on the mystery coordinate, his mind racing with possibilities. "Prepare a recon team. I want eyes on that location." "Yes, sir," Jensen replied, already dispatching the orders. The Defiant hummed with a controlled urgency as it maneuvered through the cosmos toward the unknown sector. The stars outside painted a serene canvas, their tranquil glow belying the tension that gripped the crew. Inside the ship, every corridor, every console was a conduit of purpose. The air carried a mix of antiseptic cleanliness and the faint, underlying scent of machine oil, a constant reminder of the ship's ceaseless operation. Crew members passed by Walker, each nod a silent testament to their shared resolve. As the Defiant drew closer to the mysterious coordinates, the bridge was bathed in the dim light of distant celestial bodies. "Visual coming up," announced the navigator, his voice a low thrum in the quiet. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a planet shrouded in swirling clouds, its surface a tapestry of shadow and light. "No signs of life or activity from initial scans," reported the science officer, his tone a blend of curiosity and caution. Walker felt the deck beneath him vibrate softly with the ship's heartbeat, the gentle thrum a counterpoint to his quickening pulse. "Keep scanning. There's something here. I can feel it." The crew's focus sharpened, the air charged with the electricity of imminent discovery. Sensors probed the mystery planet, peeling back layers of atmosphere to spy the secrets held beneath. Suddenly, the silence was broken by a crisp ping from the console. "Anomaly detected," the officer called out, his voice cutting through the hush. On the screen, a structure, geometric and unnatural, appeared amid the planet's rugged terrain. "Looks manufactured. Definitely not natural," he added. Walker leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. The structure, with its precise angles and symmetrical design, was a puzzle piece out of place in the natural chaos of the planet's surface. What was it? A base? A weapon? A beacon? "We need to investigate," Walker decided, the weight of command resolute in his voice. "Prepare for surface engagement." The mystery of the structure loomed large as the Defiant descended towards the planet, its shadow merging with the darkness of the unknown below. As the Defiant descended toward the mysterious planet, the tension among the crew palpitated through the corridors like a living thing, its pulse synchronous with the ship's descent into the planet's atmosphere. Captain Walker stood at the forefront of the bridge, his eyes fixed on the forward screen that now displayed the enigmatic structure in increasing detail. The atmosphere of the planet buffeted the ship with winds that howled against the hull, a banshee's wail that was more felt than heard, the vibrations a constant reminder of the alien world's hostility. The structure loomed closer, its outlines sharpening against the backdrop of rugged terrain, an obelisk of unknown intent standing solitary amid swirling dust clouds that tasted of iron when the air recyclers failed to fully cleanse the intake. "Surface conditions are harsh, Captain. Winds at 90 kilometers per hour, visibility 3 meters and dropping," reported the helmsman, his voice steady despite the clear challenge. "Take us down behind that ridge. It'll give us some cover from the wind," Walker directed, pointing to a natural barrier on the landscape not far from the structure. The ship tilted gently, obeying with the grace of a creature born to the stars, but adapting to the storm. Once landed, Walker convened a brief strategy meeting in the launch bay. The air here was thick with the scent of lubricant and the electric tang of pre-combat anticipation. The team assembled was a small one, designed for speed and discretion rather than force. Each member was clad in armor that whispered softly against the metal floor as they moved, a subtle symphony of readiness. "Remember, we don't know what we're walking into. Keep comms open and watch each other's backs," Walker briefed, his eyes briefly meeting those of each team member. "We're here to recon and report, not engage. Understood?" "Understood, sir," came the chorus of replies, each voice a thread woven into the fabric of the mission. They disembarked into a world of gusting winds and churning dust, the planet's surface a canvas of undulating shadows cast by the twin suns that fought to pierce the storm's veil. Visibility was indeed poor, each step an act of faith as much as determination. the ground beneath their feet firm yet somehow untrustworthy. The structure stood a silent sentinel as they approached, its surface smooth and unnervingly reflective, mirroring the storm's chaos with a calm that bordered on defiance. Touching it, the surface was cold, unyielding, and smooth, like glass, yet harder than any mineral known to humanity. Sergeant Hayes, leading the approach, signaled a halt a few meters from the entrance, a dark maw that beckoned them forward. His hand signal was crisp, cutting through the swirling dust as he took point, stepping into the shadow of the doorway. Inside, the air was still, a stark contrast to the howling winds outside. The silence was profound, a blanket that smothered sound and heightened their senses to the point where even the soft clicking of their own equipment seemed deafening. The corridor beyond stretched forward, lit by an intermittent glow that seemed to pulse gently, leading them deeper into the heart of the structure. With each step, the mystery of their purpose here deepened, the unknowns multiplying around them like the echoes of steps in the empty halls. "What is this place?" murmured one of the team members, his voice low and awed by the scale and the enigma of their surroundings. "We'll find out," Walker replied, his voice a mix of command and curiosity, as they moved deeper into the labyrinth, each turn and reveal a piece of a puzzle they were only just beginning to understand. Delving deeper into the labyrinthine structure, the team's senses were assailed by a sudden shift in the environment. The air cooled significantly, a chill seeping into their bones despite their insulated suits, and a faint luminescence bathed the corridor in an eerie, azure glow. The walls, smooth and featureless before, now bore intricate carvings, their patterns complex and swirling, hinting at a language or symbolism far removed from human understanding. Captain Walker trailed his fingers along the carvings, feeling the intricate depressions. "These could be ancient, predating any known civilization in this sector," he whispered, his voice reverberating softly against the stone. The scent of age and disuse hung heavy, an olfactory ghost that spoke of long decades without the presence of living beings. It mingled with a sharp, clean note that might have been the residue of some long-evaporated chemical used by this place's creators. As they progressed, the ground beneath their boots changed from hard, cold stone to a softer, metallic substance that gave slightly underfoot, cushioning their steps and muffling their movements. The change was subtle yet disconcerting, as if the very floor was alive and responsive to their presence. Suddenly, Sergeant Hayes halted, raising a hand for silence. Ahead, the corridor opened into a vast chamber. The light was brighter here, the air tinged with a metallic tang that tasted like copper on their tongues. They peered around the corner, their bodies taut with anticipation. The chamber was dominated by a massive device, its purpose unclear, but its design unmistakably deliberate. It was a tangle of tubes and conduits, centered around a dark, crystal-like core that pulsed with a soft, internal light. The machine stood silent, yet the space around it vibrated with a potential energy, as if it were holding its breath, waiting. "Looks inactive, but stay sharp," Walker instructed, his gaze locked on the device. "Hayes, readings." Hayes approached, his scanner in hand. Its screen flickered with rapid data streams as he swept it over the device. "No power signature that I can detect, but there's a resonance. Something's not right. It's like it's waiting." Walker nodded, understanding the implication. Whatever this device was, it was not merely a relic. It could be a weapon, a beacon, or something else entirely. Something beyond their current understanding. "Let's find the control panel," he decided, stepping into the chamber. The rest of the team fanned out, their lights casting long shadows across the chamber's strange geometry. The walls here were lined with panels, some bearing more of the mysterious glyphs they had seen before. Lieutenant Jensen, who had been quietly taking samples and readings, approached one such panel. These symbols might be some form of control interface. They're repeated across several panels. Walker joined him, examining the glyphs. "Any luck deciphering them?" Jensen shook his head. "Nothing concrete, but their arrangement suggests they could be interactive. Maybe some kind of input mechanism." Walker considered this, then pressed his hand against one of the glyphs. It glowed briefly under his touch, the light spreading through a network of lines that connected to other glyphs. A low, thrumming vibration started, felt more through their feet than heard, as if the entire chamber was coming to life. "Everyone, be ready for anything," Walker called out, his voice firm, as the glyph under his hand brightened, and the core of the device began to glow with an increasing light, promising revelations or dangers as yet unseen. As the light from the device intensified, the air vibrated with a palpable energy that prickled their skin and raised the hairs on their arms. The glow enveloped the chamber, casting everything in a surreal blue hue that seemed to pulse in rhythm with their heightened heartbeats. "Stay focused," Captain Walker cautioned, his voice cutting through the mounting tension. The team tightened their formation, each member alert to any change in the chamber's atmosphere. Suddenly, the floor beneath them began to shift. Panels slowly retracted, revealing beneath them a complex network of luminescent circuits that spread like veins across the room's underbelly. The sight was mesmerizing, technology so advanced it bordered on the magical, its beauty stark against the stark utilitarianism of their own gear. "Look at this," murmured Hayes, kneeling to examine the newly exposed circuitry. His touch elicited a cascade of colors that flowed along the pathways, illuminating the room with data in motion, a visual symphony of alien knowledge. The walls resonated with this activity, the stone itself seeming to awaken with ancient secrets. Jensen, his eyes wide with both awe and caution, was quick to set up his scanning equipment. "I'm picking up energy fluctuations," he reported, his voice steady despite the awe-inspiring display. "It's like the structure itself is part of a larger mechanism, possibly planetary in scale." Walker nodded, processing the implications. "This isn't just a building or a machine. It might be a key component of something much bigger. We could be standing in the heart of an ancient system designed to manipulate planetary environments, or worse." The notion hung heavy in the air, a daunting prospect that dwarfed their initial mission parameters. The chamber now felt like a sanctum of a bygone civilization, its purposes inscrutable, but its capabilities undeniable. "Captain, we should consider the risks of activating unknown technology," Jensen suggested, a note of caution lacing his clinical observation. Walker agreed, his decision-making sharpened by the potential dangers. "We document everything but avoid further interaction until we understand more." His command was met with nods of agreement, the team's professionalism overruling the human curiosity that tugged at their minds. As they prepared to retreat, a low, rhythmic pulsation began to resonate through the chamber. The core of the device, previously inert and dark, now shimmered with a light that grew steadily, synchronized with the pulsations. "Time to go," Walker said abruptly, the urgency clear in his clipped tone. The team did not need further prompting, gathering their equipment rapidly. The retreat was tense, each step away from the chamber echoing with the throbbing pulse of the alien device. They exited into the corridor, the door sliding shut behind them with a hiss that sealed the chamber once again in its lonely vigil. Outside, the storm had calmed, the raging winds now a gentle whisper compared to the storm of possibilities they had stirred within. The Defiant loomed in the distance, a beacon of safety against the backdrop of an alien world that had just expanded the boundaries of their understanding. As they made their way back to the ship, the mystery of the structure and its potential implications loomed large, ensuring that the mission was far from over. The data they carried back was not just scientific. It was a Pandora's box, promising answers, but also hinting at questions they had yet to even conceive. Back aboard the Defiant, the atmosphere was one of subdued contemplation, as the crew digested the enormity of their discovery. The ship was quiet, the usual murmur of activity now a silent vigil as they awaited the analysis of the data retrieved from the alien structure. Captain Walker stood in the observation deck, gazing out at the stars, his reflection a ghostly overlay on the glass, mirroring the turmoil within. "The data's encrypted beyond anything we've seen before," Jensen reported, breaking the silence. His voice was laced with a mix of frustration and awe. a testament to the complexity of the alien technology. But there's a pattern, an algorithm that seems to mimic natural processes. Walker turned from the window, his face set in thoughtful lines. Could it be a form of artificial intelligence? Perhaps something self-aware? Possibly, Jensen conceded, tapping on his tablet to bring up a series of graphs and symbols that danced like fireflies on the screen. If it is, it's unlike any AI we've developed, more integrated with its environment, as if the planet and the device are part of a single organism. The idea lingered in the air, a profound possibility that hinted at civilizations leagues beyond human understanding. Walker felt the weight of each implication, like stones in his stomach. The responsibility was immense, the potential for danger even more so. In the mess hall, the crew gathered, their conversations low and speculative. Sergeant Hayes sat apart, his eyes distant, a half-eaten meal forgotten in front of him. The mission had stirred something in him, a sense of unease that went beyond the immediate danger they had faced. "Everything all right, Hayes?" Walker asked, approaching with a quiet concern. Hayes looked up, his expression grim. "It's like we've opened a door we can't close, sir. What if we're not ready for what's on the other side?" Walker nodded, understanding the sergeant's trepidation. "It's a risk, but knowledge is always a double-edged sword. We proceed with caution, but proceed we must." As the crew's discussion continued, a sudden alert chimed through the ship, a stark sound that cut through the low hum of voices. "Captain, you need to see this," called the communications officer from the bridge. Walker followed the summons with swift strides, arriving to find the bridge crew tense, their focus on the main screen which now showed a disturbing scene. The planet they had left was changing, its atmosphere swirling with unnatural patterns. The structure they had explored emitting a pulse of energy visible even from space. "It's activating," said the navigator, his voice tight with worry. "Whatever we did, it started something." Walker's gaze hardened as he watched the phenomenon unfold. The implications were immediate and potentially catastrophic. Turning to his crew, he issued a new command, his voice resolute. "Prepare for a deep space probe launch. We need to understand this reaction not from afar, but up close." The crew mobilized with renewed purpose, each member driven by a blend of fear and fascination. As the probe prepared for launch, the Defiant itself felt like a sentient being, bristling in anticipation of what they might uncover. The mystery of the alien structure was deepening, each revelation another layer in a cosmic puzzle that was far from benign. What had begun as a mission of exploration was quickly spiraling into a race against an unknown, possibly catastrophic transformation. As the probe sliced through the cold vacuum of space toward the transforming planet, the Defiant's crew huddled around monitors, the electric anticipation palpable in the air. The deep space probe, a marvel of human engineering, was equipped with sensors and cameras designed to withstand and record extreme environmental conditions, sending back real-time data that might illuminate the burgeoning mystery below. Captain Walker watched the feed intently, his jaw set, as the probe penetrated the swirling atmospheric anomalies that now enshrouded the planet. Visuals flickered onto the screen, showing a chaotic ballet of winds and ether, the planet's surface alive with a network of pulsating lights that traced a pattern too symmetrical to be natural. "Look at the energy spikes," pointed out Jensen, his finger tracing the arcs of light that seemed to connect various points on the planet like a neural network. "It's as if the entire planet is waking up." The imagery was unsettling yet mesmerizing. Waves of light undulated across the terrain, synchronized in an alien rhythm, their glow casting eerie shadows that danced wildly across the probe's camera lens. The air in the control room was thick, each crew member's breath a silent cloud in the chill of apprehension. Suddenly, the probe's feed stammered, the image distorting as if struggling against an unseen force. "We're losing signal," announced the communications officer, his voice a tense thread in the thick fabric of focus that draped the room. Walker's response was curt, his command clipped with urgency. "Boost the signal. Don't let us go blind now." Efforts to stabilize the connection succeeded only partially. The visuals now came in bursts, each clear span revealing more of the planet's transformation. Ground Zero appeared to be the ancient structure they had explored, now a nexus of brilliant light that throbbed with a palpable intensity. The planet's transformation was not just a spectacle of light and energy. It had a voice, a low and resonant vibration that the probe's audio managed to capture and relay back to the ship. This sound, though not loud, filled the control room with a deep, resonating pulse that seemed to sync with the very heartbeat of all who listened. "It's like a call," muttered Hayes, unable to tear his eyes from the screen. Walker nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "Or a warning," he added softly. As they watched, the structure's light surged in a blinding crescendo, then abruptly ceased, plunging the planet into a momentary darkness. When the light returned, it was transformed. No longer a chaotic dance of energies, but a steady, piercing beam that shot into the cosmos, pointing directly at another distant point in space. "The beam, it's directed towards the Thalos sector," Jensen announced, his analysis quick. "There's nothing significant in that sector, just a binary star system and some uninhabited planets." "Or so we thought," Walker said, the implications dawning on him. "Prepare the ship. We're heading to the Thalos sector." As the crew scrambled to respond, the mystery deepened, each revealed secret layering upon the last, pointing them towards a new destination, perhaps to answers or into the jaws of further unknowns. The Defiant was no longer just a ship. It was a harbinger navigating through the shadows of cosmic secrets, each discovery a step into the vast, echoing unknown. As the Defiant set its course toward the Thalos sector, the ship's atmosphere was charged with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. The crew, each member now deeply invested in the unfolding mystery, worked with a quiet intensity, their actions precise and deliberate. Captain Walker paced the bridge, his steps silent on the soft carpet, reflecting the gravity of their mission. The journey was punctuated by the soft beeps and clicks of the ship's systems, each sound a note in the symphony of space travel, resonating more as a reminder of the ship's isolation in the vast emptiness. The view outside the viewport was a swirl of stars and cosmic dust, painting a picture of the infinite that was both beautiful and daunting. "We are approaching the Thalos sector," announced the navigator, his voice cutting through the hush that had fallen over the bridge. The digital map displayed on the main screen zoomed in on their destination, highlighting the binary star system that illuminated the sector with a harsh, unforgiving light. As they neared, an anomaly was detected, not a physical object, but a distortion in space itself, like a mirage in the cosmic desert. "It appears to be some kind of energy field," Jensen explained, adjusting the sensors to better analyze the phenomenon. "It's stable, but unlike any natural occurrence we've cataloged." Walker leaned forward, his gaze fixed on the readings. "Could this be what the beam was pointing to?" he mused aloud, more to himself than anyone else. The possibility hung in the air, a new thread in the tangled web of their quest. The crew's response was a blend of nods and murmured agreements, the shared understanding that they were on the brink of yet another discovery. "Take us in, but keep us at a safe distance," Walker ordered, his decision firm despite the unknowns. "I want all hands on alert. We don't know what we're dealing with." As the Defiant cautiously approached the energy field, the ambient light from the binary stars cast shadows across the bridge, creating a play of light and dark that mirrored the uncertainty of their situation. The energy field shimmered like a curtain in the wind, its surface rippling with colors that defied description, colors not seen before by human eyes. The sensory array began to feed data rapidly, numbers and graphs sprawling across the screens, while the crew watched in a silent awe. The field did not just deflect light, it seemed to absorb sound as well, casting a blanket of silence around itself that was eerie in its completeness. "This is no natural phenomenon," Jensen finally broke the silence. "It's artificial, a construct, and it's old, incredibly old." The revelation added a profound depth to their mission. They were not merely exploring, they were uncovering a piece of the universe's hidden history, perhaps a forgotten chapter of an ancient civilization's story. "Let's find the key to this lock," Walker said, his voice resolute. "Prepare a probe. We need to know what lies beyond this field, what secrets it guards. As the probe was launched, disappearing into the vibrant anomaly, the crew of the Defiant waited with bated breath, their eyes glued to the monitors. What would come back was anyone's guess, but one thing was certain. They were about to peel back another layer of the cosmic mystery that had chosen them as much as they had pursued it. As the probe vanished into the mesmerizing energy field, an anxious silence enveloped the Defiant. The crew watched the data transmission screen intently, where only static greeted them initially. Minutes stretched like hours, the tension palpable in the recycled air that carried a faint trace of electrical charge, a byproduct of the ship's strained systems working overtime. Suddenly, the screen flickered back to life. Visuals streamed in, shaky but gradually stabilizing, revealing a landscape that defied expectations. Beyond the energy field lay not a void, but a vibrant ecosystem thriving on a hidden planet. Verdant valleys sprawled beneath a sky of swirling amber and violet, a celestial tapestry that bathed the world in a surreal glow. "Is that vegetation?" whispered Hayes, his usual stoicism giving way to awe. The imagery confirmed it. Towering flora unlike anything catalogued, their leaves shimmering with a metallic sheen, rustling not from wind. They could hear no sound through the vacuum of space, but from the movements of strange, bioluminescent creatures that flitted between them. Captain Walker leaned closer, his eyes narrowing in wonder and calculation. "It's a biosphere, sealed off from the universe by that energy field. It must be self-sustaining." Jensen toggled through the readings, his excitement barely contained. "The atmosphere is breathable, and there are signs of advanced bioengineering. Whoever built that field, they created a sanctuary, a living ark." The revelation spurred a flurry of activity on the bridge. Walker directed the team to prepare for a surface mission. "We need samples. Biological, botanical, everything. If there's technology down there that can create this sanctuary, I want to understand it." The preparation for the surface expedition was meticulous. The airlock became a staging area, filled with the scents of antiseptic and the sharp tang of ozone from the equipment checks. Every tool, every suit was checked and double-checked, the responsibility of their mission weighing on everyone. As the first team descended to the planet, their boots touched soil that was vibrant with life, each step releasing a fragrance of unknown flowers and fresh earth, a stark contrast to the sterile environment they had left behind on the Defiant. The ground was spongy, rich with moisture and teeming with microbial life that danced away from their touch, visible only through the scanners that painted a picture of a bustling micro-ecosystem at their feet. Sergeant Hayes led the team with a cautious respect, his voice soft over the comms. "Let's tread lightly. We're not just explorers. We're guests here." They collected samples, documenting the alien flora whose branches swayed gently, a motion that suggested an unseen communication between them. The bioluminescent creatures, curious and unafraid, hovered close, their bodies casting a soft light that painted the explorers in hues of green and blue. Back on the Defiant, Walker watched the live feed, his heart caught between the marvel of discovery and the ache of knowing how fragile this hidden gem might be. "Jensen, keep monitoring the energy field. I want to know if it fluctuates with our presence." As they prepared to return, the mystery deepened with the realization that this sanctuary was not abandoned. Subtle signs, a pathway through the undergrowth, a geometric pattern of stones, suggested intelligence and intent. "We're not alone here," Walker concluded, as the team made their way back, their minds alight with the possibilities of what lay ahead. Their mission now a delicate balance of exploration and diplomacy in a world that was a living, breathing enigma. As the crew of the Defiant regrouped aboard their ship, Captain Walker convened a strategic meeting to plan their next steps. The conference room was charged with a palpable focus as data from the planet streamed live onto the screens, offering a panoramic view of the verdant world they had just begun to explore. "We've confirmed the presence of an advanced ecosystem and possible signs of intelligent life," Walker began, his tone setting the gravity of their situation. "Our next steps must be measured and respectful. This planet is not just a discovery, It's a responsibility. Jensen, at the operations console, enhanced the visual feed, pinpointing areas of interest. The patterns we observed, the geometric stone arrangements, they're most concentrated here. He pointed to a valley ringed by towering structures that resembled ancient obelisks. It suggests this might be a central hub, possibly a place of significance to the inhabitants. Hayes leaned forward, his eyes narrowing on the image. We should establish a perimeter around this zone. Non-invasive monitoring only. No boots on the ground unless we're sure it won't disturb the local ecosystem or its people. Agreed, Walker nodded. We'll set up remote sensors. I want a full spectral analysis. Air, soil, subterranean. Anything that helps us understand this place without direct interference. The team set to work, deploying drones that buzzed quietly as they slipped through the ship's airlock and descended towards the planet. These drones were equipped with the latest in non-intrusive technology: high-resolution cameras, atmospheric probes, and subsonic audio capture devices, all designed to minimize their presence. Back on the bridge, the crew monitored the drones' progress, their screens alive with the lush imagery of the alien world. The air was filled with a clinical sterility, a contrast to the vibrant, earthy aromas of the planet below, reminding them of the barriers that stood between them and this new world. As the drones reached the designated perimeter, they began their work. Lasers mapped the topography with precision, while microphones, sensitive enough to detect the flap of an insect's wings, listened to the natural soundscape. The data collected was rich in detail, offering insights into the planet's health and the daily rhythms of its flora and fauna. Look at this, said Jensen, zooming in on an area where the stone patterns were particularly dense. The drones had detected heat signatures and subtle movements, indicative of activity. There could be something underneath these structures, something living. Walker considered this new puzzle piece. Increase surveillance here, but keep it passive. I want to know what's there, but let's not startle our hosts. As the sun set over the planet, casting the landscape in a twilight glow, the drones captured images of bioluminescent plants beginning to glow, their light patterns complex and possibly communicative. The visual feed was breathtaking, alien yet oddly familiar, a reminder of the universal beauty of nature. We're not just explorers anymore, we're witnesses, Walker mused aloud, his voice soft but carrying through the room. Let's make sure we respect that role. The meeting adjourned with each member of the crew clear on their roles. As they set about their tasks, the Defiant remained in a high orbit, a silent guardian watching over a world that had already expanded their understanding of the possible, their strategy a blend of curiosity and caution, designed to bridge the vast unknown with the meticulous care of a steward. As the days progressed, the team on the Defiant meticulously analyzed the data collected by the drones. The planet, with its pulsating bioluminescent flora and complex stone arrangements, hinted at a civilization that was both advanced and enigmatic. Captain Walker and his team were poised on the brink of interaction but remained committed to observation, respecting the unseen boundaries of their hosts. In the quiet of the ship's lab, Jensen and his team worked on decrypting the patterns observed in the plant light sequences. There's a rhythm here, almost like a language, Jensen noted, his screen displaying a series of synchronized pulses. If we can decode this, it might be our key to understanding them. Walker watched over Jensen's shoulder, his presence reassuring. Keep at it, Jensen. Every piece of the puzzle helps. Meanwhile, Hayes coordinated with the surveillance teams to refine their monitoring techniques. Using the latest in drone technology, they adjusted their flight patterns to minimize disruption to the local wildlife, the drones now barely whispering through the alien sky. The data streamed back in real time, a digital tapestry of life unfolding beneath the verdant canopies. On the bridge, Walker discussed their findings with his senior staff. We're visitors here, he reminded them. Our first contact must be cautious, respectful. We've learned from past mistakes on other worlds. This time, it must be different. The crew nodded in agreement, each member aware of the historic weight of their mission. They continued their work, compiling comprehensive environmental and biological profiles of the planet. Every scent of alien pollen analyzed, every texture of unfamiliar bark felt and recorded, contributed to their growing understanding of this lush world. As the analysis became more refined, a breakthrough came. Jensen managed to match the rhythmic patterns of the plant lights to certain passive energy shifts detected around the stone structures. It's not just random, it's deliberate. They're using these patterns to communicate, or perhaps even to sustain their ecosystem, Jensen proposed, excitement lacing his normally calm demeanor. Prepare for a passive demonstration, Walker decided. If these patterns are a form of communication, let's respond in kind. We'll replicate the light sequence using the drones, see if it elicits a response, but keep it contained, nothing too invasive. The team set up the experiment with meticulous care, programming the drones to emit light in the exact sequences Jensen had decoded. As night fell on the planet, the drones hovered over a field, near the stone structures, their lights beginning to pulse in the alien night. The response was immediate and breathtaking. The fields of bioluminescent plants began to respond, their lights intensifying, weaving new patterns that rippled across the valleys and hills. It was as if the planet itself was acknowledging their presence, greeting them in a splash of radiant color. "Looks like we're on the right track," Walker observed, watching the display from the bridge. The crew's excitement was palpable, their faces lit by the glow of their screens, reflecting the flickering lights from below. "We'll continue with these passive interactions," Walker concluded. "Let's see what else we can learn about our hosts. This is just the beginning." With each careful step, they deepened their dialogue with the planet, their strategy a blend of scientific inquiry and diplomatic caution, crafting a bridge across the stars built not of steel and force, but of light and understanding. Under the velvet cloak of night, the Defiant hovered silently above the vibrant alien landscape, its presence now a familiar part of the sky. The crew's continuous interactions with the planet through light had gradually uncovered layers of communication, each discovery deepening their respect for the sophisticated ecosystem and its inhabitants. Captain Walker stood at the observation deck, watching the orchestrated dance of lights between the drones and the flora below. Beside him, Jensen monitored the responses, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the data screens. "We're getting consistent patterns now," he reported, his voice tinged with excitement and awe. "It's not just responses. They're initiating communication, sharing. It's like they're teaching us." Walker nodded, his eyes reflecting the stars and the spectacle below. "Humanity has always looked to the stars for answers, for kinship," he mused aloud. "Perhaps, in a way, we've found both here." The breakthrough came during one of these nocturnal sessions. The planet's lifeforms began to replicate the exact sequences the drones had been using, but with additional patterns, complex, layered, and unmistakably intentional. The message was clear even if the language was not, a gesture of trust and acceptance. Hayes, overseeing the drone operations, called in the observation. "Captain, you need to see this. They're not just responding anymore. They're reaching out." The crew gathered, watching as the planet's surface lit up with a dazzling display of lights that now extended beyond their initial interaction zone. It was a breathtaking sight that resonated deeply with everyone aboard. The alien light show was a powerful testament to the success of their careful, respectful approach. "This," Walker declared, turning to face his crew, "this is a moment of change, not just for us, but potentially for all of humanity. We came as explorers and found more than new lands and skies. We found a connection." His next words were chosen with care, each one heavy with the responsibility they all shared. "Let's take this opportunity to establish a foundation not just for a dialogue with a new species, but for a new era of human exploration, one based on mutual respect and learning." The plan was set into motion. Using the data and patterns shared by the alien species, the crew began to construct a more permanent means of communication, a station on the planet's surface designed to be minimally invasive and powered by the same light energy used by the planet's inhabitants. This outpost would serve as a bridge between humanity and the new world they had come to know. As the station took shape, designed in harmony with the local ecosystem and using materials and techniques that minimized its impact, it stood as a symbol of humanity's potential to be a force for good in the cosmos. A beacon, not of conquest, but of cooperation. In his address to mark the completion of the station, Walker's words resonated across the Defiant and back to Earth, carried live to millions watching with bated breath. Today, we stand not as aliens, but as allies. We have been welcomed into a new world, not by force, but through understanding and patience. May this be the legacy of our time among the stars, a legacy of peace and friendship. As the crew celebrated, the lights below seemed to pulse in concert, a visual echo of Walker's sentiments. Humanity had not only found a new world, they had taken their first steps into a larger, more hopeful universe. The dedication ceremony for the new communication station on the verdant alien world was a symphony of colors and light, reflecting the newfound bond between humanity and the planet's enigmatic inhabitants. As the twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, the Defiant crew, alongside several of the planet's native beings, gathered at the site. The air was filled with the crisp, clean scent of the evening breeze, mingling with the earthy aroma of the alien flora. Captain Walker stood before the assembly, his figure outlined against the backdrop of the setting suns. His voice carried clearly in the quiet evening. This station represents more than a structure. It is a promise that our future in the stars is not one of conquest, but of cooperation. Around him, the crew and their new friends from the planet listened intently, their faces illuminated by the gentle glow of bioluminescent plants and the soft light of the station itself. The structure, designed to mimic the natural beauty and function of its surroundings, pulsed with a light that mimicked the heartbeat of the planet. In our time here, we have learned more than we ever imagined. About this world, about its people, and about ourselves, Walker continued. His gaze swept over the diverse assembly, human and alien alike, each face a testament to the barriers they had overcome. We have found common ground in our shared desire to preserve and learn, to grow not apart, but together. Beside him, an elder of the planet's inhabitants stepped forward, their skin shimmering with subtle hues that changed with the light. In their own melodic language, complemented by the translation devices that were a product of the new collaboration, they spoke, "Your people came as strangers, but now stand as allies. In light and learning, we find strength." The sentiment resonated deeply, echoing the planet's rhythm, as if the very ground beneath their feet approved of this union. The station's lights brightened for a moment, a visual applause from the world itself. The ceremony concluded with the activation of the communication beacon, a tower designed to both send and receive messages across space, utilizing the unique properties of the planet's natural energy. As the beacon flared to life, sending a pulse of brilliant light skyward, a cheer erupted from the crowd. Hayes, standing among his fellow crew members, felt a surge of pride. "Look at what we've accomplished," he said to Jensen, who nodded, his usual reserve brightened by a smile. "We've set a course for the future," Jensen agreed, his eyes reflecting the beacon's light. Walker, joining his crew, clapped his hands together, his voice brimming with resolve. "Let this beacon shine not just as a lamp in the darkness, but as a guide to other civilizations, other people who navigate the stars in search of understanding and peace." As the light from the beacon stretched into the cosmos, the crew of the Defiant stood together, watching the sky with a sense of accomplishment and wonder. The universe was vast, filled with countless mysteries and potential new friends, and humanity had just sent a clear message across the stars. Here we are, ready to listen, ready to learn, and ready to stand as equals. And in that moment, the title of their mission resonated with a profound truth. Aliens in Chaos Call for Humanity's Deathworlder Heroes had become a beacon of hope, a testament to humanity's role as heroes not through domination, but through diplomacy and understanding. the very best of what it means to be human.